Namaskar. Welcome to the Alumni of the Month series of new episode featuring Ms. Preeti Dhoundiyal, a law student from 2017 to 22 batch. Preeti is currently engaged and working with E&Y, the Big Four, Ernst & Young, as a consultant. So Preeti, welcome aboard to your alma mater, Delhi Metropolitan Education, where you spent your golden 5 years. I would like to know what encouraged you to be a part of DME and what encouraged you to be part of the law school.
Thank you so much for having me, ma'am. Thinking about, coming back to my alma mater is always a cherishing feeling. And, the journey that I had, spent here way goes back to while I was, navigating as a commerce student in my 12th grade. I was very sure that I do not want to, take the conventional path of becoming, a chartered accountant. And it was also something that, that was definitely in my mind that I never wanted to be, a mediocre person. So I was looking for options, and that's how, my mother told her, why don't you do law? And that is how we started, navigating applications, and I got to write the Indraprastha exam, the CUET that used to happen back then. And then with the proximity of my scores, I got into DME. And since then it was an amazing 5-year journey. And I got to learn not just about how to acquire legal mindset, but also in terms of how to be a professional, going forward.
So it's lovely knowing that you had an inclination towards law. So can you tell me a little about your background, that how it all happened, how you grew up, what were your interest areas, your hobbies, a little bit about yourself, and then we can proceed to your work dimensions.
Okay. So, I was born and raised in Delhi, and, my parents were always interested in, making me a part of who I was. I hail from Uttarakhand, and my parents were very particular in sort of understanding and keeping the vibe of the state with us, though we had multiple opportunities of going and exploring as to what the state had to offer. But in terms of the values that we imbibed, the thing was that we were always rooted with the cultural nuances of my state. And particularly there was this norm at our place that wherein my mother made sure that I learned the language, and that's how my love for culture grew. And that's how during my whole law school journey as well, I made sure that I participated in extracurricular activities wherein I enhanced not just my professional skills, but also keeping in tandem with what I had as a person to offer. And that's how the whole journey, not just of law, particularly at DME, happened. And apart from that, I think even now, as a professional, I make sure that I'm intact to my roots, and taking it forward with that bent as to the culture richness that I have for myself.
So knowing you as a person and being with you as part of your faculty in the law school also, I remember that you used to keenly participate in a lot of cultural activities, which probably brought you forward in terms of your policy research in cultural heritage. So would you like to shed some light upon the same?
Of course, so starting with, I think in my third year, I got this opportunity of studying, international relations and international law. I would like to thank all my faculties, particularly Soma ma'am, who, made sure, and Priyansha ma'am, for, teaching international relations in such an amazing manner that, I had this very notion of working for an international organization. And while I started navigating as to which are the organizations that I would love to work for, I also thought that why not add it on to the interest that I have. And culture had been very close to me since I was a kid, because I used to perform these folk dances of Uttarakhand. And I was like, okay, what could be a better opportunity of clubbing what I learned and what I love doing. So that's how my very first professional experience at UNESCO happened. And that actually, like came back from doing an internship in my third year with UNESCO, which is, which was solely on understanding as to, like how UNESCO as an international organization helps countries to, like come together and safeguard their culture and, like safeguard all the things that like are to offer to the world of in terms of the uniqueness of each of the states, particularly if we talk about India. So that was something that like happened in my third year, and then again I got the opportunity of doing the long-term internship that like one is supposed to undergo in the final year, and then henceforth like becoming a professional consultant with the organization for a year and more, wherein like I looked at the aspect of like how one can club the legal principles vis-a-vis the social aspect that like each of the element of culture is supposed to like club off. So by that, let me give you an example. There was this legal handbook that we prepared for the rights of artisans as to like how the legal conventions not just support in safeguarding the artisans' rights, but also how they can like be financially sound, so that like the art doesn't go in vain, and like it can self-sustain itself for the centuries to come. So that was really something very satisfying that I was able to contribute to.
So Preeti, this brings me to the question that, so for a law student, it's prescribed in the syllabus, and otherwise also, if you see in today's world, every law student is running towards a lot of internships. So what kind of focus or what kind of preparation do a person need for interning at the right places, which can actually give some kind of a trajectory to a long-term career? What is your take upon that?
Okay, so starting off with like how one is supposed to navigate in the law school journey, because 5 years is a long time. So like the very first understanding that one person should have is that they should have some sort of a structure as to how they would want to take their journey. So it could be like there are so many ample opportunities nowadays, given that the technology is changing every day. You can with a click of a button, like you can sort of understand what is it that you like and how you can navigate. So for that, one of the very soundness is that one needs to write well, understand well, and I think these are the skills that go a long way back. Like if you are able to articulate your ideas, if you are able to like put your words in a better form, so that like the person who is understanding, or the person who would want like the sort of like sort of how like you can actually communicate well is something that goes long way. So thinking about like the research aspect as to like are you willing to understand what it takes to like learn about the backgrounds, or like a solution that you're trying to drive out to, rather than just like understanding or jumping to conclusions. So I think research skills are there, and then like communication skills, and trying to like sort of go out of your way to sort of understand what is it that is the problem that you're going to solve, rather than like, and it could be a very basic problem of like your locality, or like any particular thing in your environment, but the understanding and the awareness is like of paramount value, that like you do understand that there is a problem, and then like how then you drive out to the solutions as to like what is it that you can do. So like answering your question, I think the first and the foremost skill is to be legally, or like rather be aware of your surroundings as to like what is it that you would want to do. And then like again like adding that to like your professional skills, like learning research, and like writing well, and then being able to communicate is something that goes a long way.
That's a very good, I believe, contribution by you for all the budding lawyers and law aspirants, which brings me to the next best question, which many students have asked me, and even I believe the culture of research and particularly policy research is something which is still new to the Indian frontiers, where we want to know more how to navigate the entire career orientation, which is not the conventional litigation, or say going for judiciary, or any of the chosen pathways in terms of going for a firm, but policy and research, how do you think it is important or relevant, and how can a student sort of create that interest there and navigate his pathway?
Okay, so that's really a very interesting question, and as I was a very active member in the research cell, all thanks to Isha ma'am, who started this research cell with this very idea that research is something, and not just in law field, even in social sciences field or any field for that matter, you need to. And this brings back me to the previous question that you asked,
Yes.
that being legally or generally aware of your surrounding, and how do you do it, how do you derive to conclusions as to what is happening in the surrounding, is to research, right? You
Correct.
need to dwell down to the situations that are going to happen. And talking about the policy work of things that how, again, research helps you to understand that there's a problem.
Yes.
And when you know that there's a problem, then you try to delve it out in terms of what could be the solutions that are very well induced in that particular situation.
Correct.
So talking about law and policy, what happens is that in the policy sphere, when you're thinking of carving a policy for a set of people, it is again research is a paramount part of it. And by that I mean that you need to understand who are the people who are going to be affected by whatever policy that you're creating.
Right.
It could also be as to what is it that they have challenges which is in tandem to the real problem.
Yes.
Which is hand.
Yes.
The second thing is also whether your research is actually going to help these people, or is it going to be just superficial, or just on paper. So I think connecting with the right set of understanding and methodology is something that is always backed by research. That there are so many methods in terms of how you would want. There are sometimes for a problem you would might require primary data, or there are things that you would require secondary data, which is very aiding for your research. So it totally depends on as to how is it, and what is the problem that you're going to solve. And talking about the policy, which always go in hand with law.
Yes.
Law and policy always go in hand, because how you create a policy is on the basis of law. So, and then policy is something that is actively used in the spare in a regular course of time, because that's how people refer to. That is actually a document which people refer to or go back to while implementing the law. So,
Right.
so that is how I think research is always of paramount as to whether
Correct.
you're solving a small problem or a big problem. It is to know as to what is it that what are the situations or the understanding of a problem as to leading to a better solution.
That's a great understanding that you have provided us with, which brings me to the next best point that probably could help our viewers and listeners, that how do you take the first step? It's always about the big first step as a leap of faith, because many people would not know how to maneuver or how to actually even begin thinking about going in this direction. So can you just sort of chart out a map for all these listeners who can at least begin to think that yes, policy and research is a very valuable field, and secondly, what is the mapping? What do you do to actually be where you are sitting right now?
Okay.
Yes.
So starting off again, as I mentioned that law school is a very long time. So starting to read about the issues that you are passionate about is something that can lead to dwelling deep into a subject. And while I say that dwelling deep is you going through the basics again and again, and for that you need to be focused. So either what you can do is you have an ample amount of time in your very nascent years in law school, like the first year, wherein you do have legal subject, but the more subjects that you have, I was a BLB student, so I studied 3:2 ratio, wherein 3 subjects were of social sciences. So those social sciences subjects actually gave me an understanding as to what is happening in the society. And the legal subject, there was this subject called legal method, wherein we used to understand as to how is the law actually being
Correct.
formulated. And definitely while the law is being formulated, who are the people in the society that are being advantaged of, you know? So that is how it is. And then, so I think reading helps a lot. So, you know, like one, if I start from the very ground, reading helps, you know.
Right.
So reading is something that you can do in terms of carving out, you know, like very niche topic. It could be
Right.
also multiple topics that
Correct.
you're interested in. So you can start reading about it, and then not just reading about it, and then start formulating your ideas as to how is it that you can bring the best out in that problem. So, and for that, you know, like reading helps, writing helps. So, you know, like articulating your ideas as to, you know, like, and that could again be, you know, like two ways. Why? The first way could be wherein, you know, like you are seconding to the ideas that are already in the society, which are, you know, like very well functioned, which are, you know, like propounded by, you know, like people or philosophers for that matter. And then there could be a second, you know, like idea wherein, you know, you are literally carving out a very different part altogether. And for that, you know, like again, reading helps, because, you know,
Right.
like the more you read on a subject, it's better that, you know, like you start dwelling those ideas, and with comprehension it adds on. So, you know,
Correct.
like reading and writing is something about, you know, like the focused area where you would want to go is something that is really helpful. Apart from that, you know, like doing meaningful internships, you know, like connecting with people who are doing, you know, like
Right.
field work, or, you know, like people who are, you know, like on ground and seeing the situation, and then evaluating as to, you know, like the things that you're reading in books, is it, you know, like seconding to the work that the people are doing on the ground, is, you know, like the second step. That,
Right.
you know, like, so speaking with the stakeholders, speaking with the beneficiaries is again, you know, like going to give you a hands-on experience. So that is something that you can go, and, you know, like these are very small steps that could be done, you know, like as a law student, because, you know, like you're always inquisitive and you
Right.
have to be on the go in,
Yes.
you know, like actually trying to solve a problem. So if you're interested, then, you know, like this all is going to be really fun, you know, like,
Right.
and that's how, you know, like I navigated my whole law school journey. I had done so many internships at commissions, you know, like which actually gave me an idea that, you know, like this is something that I can actually do professionally, wherein, you know, like, so starting off with my internship with the Delhi Commission of Child Rights, or, you know, like my work at National Green Tribunal, or particularly, you know, like doing the work internship at, you know, Delhi Commission of Women. So
Right.
these are all, you know, like places wherein what I had studied in my law school was, you know, like the data that I had, but
Right.
then getting onto these internships gave me a hands-on experience as to what is happening on ground. So that actually gave me an understanding that, okay, you know, like law is one thing which has been established, right?
Right.
But policy is something that could be changed, you know, like, so that change in the shift of the mindset, you know, like could be done through, you know, like again, observation. So observation is something that is very helpful. So you know, like I think policy and law go hand in hand. So it's always important that, you know, like you read as much as possible about a law and as to how is it functioning on the ground, so that, you know, like you can actually bring tangible results in, you know, like the society.
That's great, Preeti. Now, I mean to connect the dots. It's
Yeah,
important that we talk about how all of this really helps you to be on the ground
yeah,
and doing what work you are doing right now. If I may mention a few projects that you have been working with, especially at your current organization, which is EY, Ernst & Young, and there you have been handling the Mahakumbh project and others also. I have seen that you have been also working for some sort of a museum authority, and can you just share a few insights as to the practical modeling of all these things that you have shared with us and our viewers, that how to bring that as a whole package of doing, liking and then delivering.
That's really something that, you know, like would be helpful to the viewers. Um, what I would like to say, so my, you know, like organization gave me an hands-on experience. I would like to iterate that I was the youngest, you know, like one to be deployed on the
Wow.
Mahakumbh project, which is, you know, like a gigantic project, as you know, that it's, you know,
Absolutely.
like Mahakumbh is inscribed in UNESCO, you know, and then this year, you know, like it was happening for the 144th year, as, you know, like claimed. So what was the idea and the role of EY in, projecting this project was to enhance the pilgrim experience. And while, again, it's a culturally induced, project that is happening in a scenario and a state, and a country which is so induced right now. Also, UNESCO is chairing its 20th intergovernmental committee meeting,
Yes.
and Deepavali is inscribed as an ICH
Wow.
element yesterday.
Okay.
So that's again a victory for India. But coming back to Mahakumbh, what role I played was mostly in aligning the stakeholders in terms of contract management, wherein the legal acumen that I
Right.
had came into picture. And
Yes.
as far as the policy work is concerned, the project monitoring of these projects, which were of creating sort of a temporary city within 3 months, was a very challenging task. But
Right.
how we navigated through was through proper documentation, deploying digital tools, and actually carving out a framework which was really helpful in sort of having this engagement, which was a 1 year long engagement before the culmination of the 45 days ritual that happens in Prayagraj. So talking about that, my role was mostly to handle contracts, in terms of onboarding agencies for implementation of creation of this whole city, wherein it entailed matters from tentage to sanitation to overall user experience, and sort of giving a very non um, on the go idea, in a way as to if a pilgrim is trying to navigate from their house, how is that they can have a very divine experience at the location, which is of taking the holy dip and then going back home with not just a ritual done, but also an experience and altogether.
Absolutely.
So that is how the whole work was
Yes.
wherein EY supported. And talking about the other engagement, which was with the archaeological department
Yes.
of West Bengal, wherein what we try to do is to sort of have the synergies between the state government
Yes.
and the private players who are very much interested in sort of safeguarding their artifacts. And you know
Nice.
that West Bengal is a highly induced culturally
Yes.
heritage own state, wherein not just the state but the people are very much interested, and every household will have their own universal propositions of artifacts or literature that they would want to safeguard. But people did not have the means to do it, because but they had the willingness to do. So what and how state intervened was through the very mandate wherein the state has this the right of being a welfare state, and to not just protect the people but also in terms of what they have to offer.
Right.
So again, the government made sure that there has to be this ownership that remains with people, so that the people are protected in terms of the cultural heritage of that very ideology, or the facts that they have. But sort of having that governance angle, wherein the government can monitor and safeguard those for the long term. So that is how, and this was a policy induced work, wherein we started carving out the legal governance from international to national, as to where are the points where the state government can actually intervene onto these public private individual partnerships, wherein the people are safeguarding what it is to actually create West Bengal as a heritage induced state by keeping the artifacts and the subjects for a longer duration.
That's
so
great.
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
how it is.
Thank you, Preeti. I think you have brought forward a lot of knowledge, and it's an absolute pleasure to host you. So with this, I think we have come to the conclusion of a great conversation that I had with you. Thank you for being with us. So this is DME TV. Thank you for being with your host, Dr. Raveena Bhargava, featuring the Alumni of the Month series and our dear alumni, Ms. Preeti Dhoundiyal. Connect with us on DME TV. Thank you.